and welcome to episode number 7 of the Godless Moms podcast. Today we are going to be talking a little bit about sex and how we talk to our kids about it as secular parents, which is, I imagine, quite different from how religious parents might talk to their kids about it. But before we get into that, I would just like to mention a couple of things. First, the chat is just it's a place where really you can do whatever you want except push your God belief. Let's not start a whether or not God exists debate in the chat. If you pull the conversation away from what we're talking about, then we're gonna say goodbye. So the other thing is that we now are on all of the audio platforms for podcasts, so iTunes, Google Podcasts, all of those fun things. And so the link to find all of those are down below in the description on our podcast page. So you can go and subscribe there. And if you don't mind, leave us a nice review, because that helps us get found on the podcast platforms. And the third thing that's really, really exciting is that the Conference on Religious Trauma is back on.
Yay!
And the link to that is down below. And that the whole kind of purpose of that is to educate the mental health community on how to treat and recognize religious trauma syndrome. And there's going to be a whole bunch of amazing speakers there that, all the names you're going to recognize. So check out the link down below to get your tickets. It's a virtual conference, so no travel needed, which makes it a lot easier. Mm-hmm. And item number 4 is that I am raising money for some Guatemalan kids. We are trying to send them some supplies to learn STEM, which is science, technology, engineering, and math. And there's also art in there. We're sending them these kits that will enable them to explore all of these fun topics and start to think critically. So if you want to donate to that, you can go to internationalatheists.org, and it's right there on the front page. There's a big banner. So with all of those things out of the way, this is my lovely co-host, Janice. How are you doing, Janice?
I am so stoked for the Conference on Religious Trauma, which we're also calling CORT, C-O-R-T. So I had the idea for this about a year or so ago, a little bit longer than that, and actually was supposed to be happening this time last year. It was supposed to be happening in April in Vancouver last year, but COVID had other plans. So then it took a while to kind of figure things out and decide to go ahead virtually. And now it's happening in May. So I want everybody to go to the website, and you get a discount just because you watch or listen to our podcast here. There is a discount code you can enter, which is POD15. That's going to give you a discount on your ticket. So please tell people about that. It's not only to educate therapists about religious trauma syndrome, but it's also to try and connect those of us, and I include myself, who struggle with religious trauma. It's to connect us with one another and with reputable therapists. And so there we have sponsors, and we have an exhibit hall. And if by any chance you have a product, like you've written a book or you have a workshop that relates to religious trauma or finding freedom after religion or anything like that, and you would be interested in exhibiting in our hall, there's a place for you too. So yeah, I'm super excited about that. And thank you so much for all your help as well with putting it together.
It's something I definitely believe in. I know that, like, in my time, I obviously am not religious, so I didn't ever experience religious trauma syndrome, but in my time doing my blog and social media and stuff like that, I have met so many people who are just, their whole entire world has just been turned upside down by what religion has done to them. And this is amazing. Like, this is going to open up a lot of opportunities for people to heal and find each other and create community. And I think it's just a really amazing thing that you're doing, Janice. And I stuck by you through this whole thing, and I truly believe in this conference.
And even this morning, I was able to add one more fantastic speaker. Her name is Hani Getter, and she came out of the ultra-Orthodox Hasidic community, and she is a gay mom and a social worker, and she is just a very interesting person and a great speaker, and I'm so glad that she will be joining us at court. I hope that all our listeners and viewers will join us also.
Yeah, that's amazing. that show, Unorthodox.
Oh yeah,
That was
it was an
incredibly
eye-opener.
moving. Yeah. Definitely
Yeah.
something you guys should watch if you haven't watched it already. That's on Netflix.
Yes.
So today we get to talk about sex, Janice.
Yeah.
I am eager to know how you like how did you learn about sex? Like, did your parents talk to you about it? And if they did, how? Because I have no idea how it happens in a religious household.
Well, I can tell you that it did not happen very well. So my dad is a total fundamentalist, and we certainly did not have, well, there was no internet back then. I mean, I grew up in the 70s. And so we didn't have books or anything about what happens as your body changes. And I'm the youngest. I have a couple of older brothers. And so at 10 years old, I got my period. And 10, that's kind of young for your childhood to come to a screeching halt. And I just felt kind of sick, like physically sick, and was not real sure about stuff. And then the sex talk I got was my dad shaking his finger in my face and saying, if you ever get pregnant, don't bother coming home. And I'm like, what does this even have to do with that? So what are you going to do when you're 10 years old and you got no internet? You're going to go to your 10-year-old friends and hope that they have an older sibling who might dish on the topic of what sex is. And so sure enough, we found an older sibling somewhere who was willing to tell us, and we were suitably mortified. I was like, you let him do what with his what in your what? And you like it? I've had a hard time believing that, frankly. So that is the sex talk I received. What was the sex talk like that you received?
Well,
or are you
very
still
different.
waiting for it?
No. Oh gosh, no. Our family is very open about these things to a point that it probably makes other people uncomfortable. But as you know, my dad was a therapist. Everything gets talked about, right? So I think it was when I was pretty young when when my parents started to talk to me about this stuff, and I knew, the gist when I was really young. And I remember there was one time, I've written about this in a blog post at some point, but there was one time when I was with my friends and I was waiting in the car for their dad to come out of the grocery store, and we saw some girlfriend and boyfriend in front of the car making out, and my friend's older sister who was in the car, she's like, ew, they're gonna get pregnant. And I was like, I just remember I was always very shy too, so I wasn't going to bring up that they were wrong. But I just remember thinking in my head, like, these people are morons. Like, you don't get pregnant from kissing. I must have been like 7 or 8 at the time. But I remember
asking someone in high school if a girl could get pregnant from a blowjob, from giving a guy a blowjob.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I was like probably 17 years old.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember.
You can't, by the way, in case you don't know.
No.
Good news.
Yeah.
The real gospel.
Great. It's great if you're on a high protein diet.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So you heard about your folks were open with you about it.
Yeah, and do you remember when like Clifford Olson was terrorizing?
Yeah.
So I was really little at the time, And I remember asking my parents, what is rape? Honest with me, and it scared me for sure. But I remember always being very appreciative of the fact that I could ask my parents and they would give me an honest answer, just like as if I was an adult or something. But I got the proper sex talk when I was 10. And I remember my dad, like professional counselor for sure. But in this instance, he was goofy. Like he was so nervous. He was giggly, like but they gave me everything, but my dad was so giggly and he was clearly quite nervous about the whole thing. And I remember when
break out the puppets? Were there puppets? Okay. Barbies? No.
But I do. My dad was always quite awkward about all of it. And I remember when I first got my period, we were living in Australia at the time. And I remember I came home. It was the worst day of my life because Australia was just, the schools in Australia were terrible. The one that I went to anyway. He came home and he's like, my mom told him, I guess, in the other room, and he comes into the living room. He's like, congratulations on becoming a woman, Courtney. It's just so awkward. It was so funny.
My kids, I have daughters. Oh, they're so lucky. And I was bound and determined that they were not going to receive the same, kind of message that I did from my dad. I wanted them to have some idea of what was coming. So, when they were like maybe 8 or whatever, I gave them a book that was, like somewhat age appropriate, but it had drawings and kind of like a cartoony sort of thing, just talking about some changes and stuff that happened with their bodies. And then when my oldest daughter got her period, I decided, and I think lots of Christian homes may actually do this, we were going to have a celebration of her entrance into womanhood. And so I called my mother and my child's godmother, and we were going out for lunch to celebrate. And I gave her this ring also. So the ring is where we enter into purity culture, right? Although the ring, it was like a dolphin, a dolphin ring. Anyway, and so my younger daughter says, "You gave Jasmine a ring for getting her period?" I said, "Yeah," and she said, "Well, that's dumb. I'd rather have a turtle." She is my very interesting, kid. But anyway, yeah. So when my kids got their periods, it was definitely, there was a lot of talk about virginity, and now you could have a baby, which they both thought was crazy because they were also only 10, but that you want to save yourself for someone special, save yourself, so that whole, they kind of got all that purity culture stuff tossed onto them, which really was too bad. But I also did make sure that they knew the proper names for every part of their body and what parts of their body might be acceptable for people to touch and what might not be acceptable, what's not acceptable. And so we talked about those things. And I mean, right from the time they were little and in the bathtub, and I'm giving them a bath because they're that little, and just talking about, this is such and such part of your body, this is your vulva, and these, that sort of thing, calling them their proper names. Because I feel like that is really important. That's an important part of parenting. And it's to our discredit as adults in a society when we can't even bring ourselves to use the proper names for different parts of our bodies. What does that say about us? That's a society steeped in shame from religious influence, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I've always, like with my kids, I've always been very, so I remember like the thing that sticks in my head about when my parents talked to me about sex was how awkward everything was and how giggly my And I didn't want to do that with my kids, despite the fact that it's a funny memory. I don't want them to feel like it's a comical thing. I don't want them to feel like it's something to be embarrassed about. And so even though like sometimes, my kids will ask things that deep inside are making me scream, like, I don't want to talk about this. I outwardly just say it normally, just answer them straight up, use the proper words. And
Mhm.
so I've always tried to be completely honest with them and not make light of things, I guess.
That is some excellent, top shelf parenting. I really like that, and that is one thing also that I had in common, when I was raising my own girls, even though I was a fundamentalist, that I made sure they knew, like, I told them that there was nothing off limits for what they could ask me. They could ask me absolutely anything. I said, although it might take me a little while to think about the best way to answer you, but you can ask me anything on any topic and I
Yeah.
will give you my response. And so I think that actually set the tone for my relationship with my daughters. And now they're in their 20s. And I do have a very close relationship with both of them. And we will talk about anything, which is
Yeah.
sometimes to the discomfort of their father. We're not married anymore. But, I remember when my kids were in their teens, and by then I was transitioning out of religion. Uh, and I decided it was time for them both to go on birth control, uh, because I didn't want them to have a child and not be prepared to have a child, or have a child at a time in their life, or have to face any other decisions that go along with being pregnant. Um, And so I felt really strongly that they needed to go on birth control. And their dad
Mhm.
was quite incensed. He was not happy with me for doing that. And then I said to him, well, are you ready to be a grandfather? Do you feel
Mhm.
like you're ready to take on the role of raising another child? At which point he said, nope, all yours. Go
Yeah.
ahead. You can do whatever you want. But that can be a hard topic for people, and particularly people coming out of a really restrictive background. It can be an uncomfortable topic. And you came out of a very open background, and still you're saying that, yeah, sometimes there are things that, you just really rather not have to talk about. But
Yeah.
because you're a parent and you love your child and you want to be raising a healthy, resilient, knowledgeable person, you are going to answer their question honestly.
Mhm. When we um my daughter, she never, like, she didn't live with us until uh she was 14.
Mhm.
And so prior to her living with us, we would get her once every 2 weekends if we were lucky.
Mhm.
And I knew that I had to, like, jam pack her mind with some knowledge in the time
Yes.
that I had her. And she was always very shy, and our relationship was never super, super tight just because we didn't get to see each other very often. And because she was shy, it was difficult to broach these situations with her. And the thing that I was worried about with her was becoming a teen mom, because her mother had children early and her mom struggled a lot. And um it was something that kind of happened in her family, and so I was worried about it. And so what I did was we watched Teen Mom together on MTV.
What a great idea.
Yeah, and I remember I would, like, pause and it was very, like, I was very nervous about it because of the fact that she was so shy and our relationship wasn't totally tight, and bringing up these topics with her it was difficult. I didn't know what she knew. I didn't know who had talked to her about what. And so I would always have a couple of drinks first. And
This
then
is just
and
water. It's only water. Yeah.
and then I would wait until my husband went to bed, and she was always allowed to stay up late because we never got to see her. And so we would stay up and we would watch Teen Mom together. And I would always pause it and try to talk to her about, you notice like the common thread through all of these stories is that the boy always leaves. Then the girl is left alone with the baby, and
Mm,
it's very, very
mm.
difficult, and all of these things. And I always, every single time we did that, I always said to her, I said, when you are ready to be dating boys, if you end up dating boys, when you're ready to do that, just all you have to do is give me the word and we're going to the doctor. I'm not going to talk to your mom. I'm not going to, although I know her mom would have supported it or whatever. I'm just
Right.
telling, that's for her to tell her mom. That's not for me to
Mhm,
tell her mom.
mhm.
And so sure enough, when she came and lived with us when she was 14, she was struggling a great deal with anxiety. And she didn't have any friends in our town because she came from the lower mainland. And so when she finally made a friend who was a boy, we were very excited because it just meant she was going to be a normal teenager, and
Yeah.
she had a chance at being happy because all kids need to have their friend group. And so
Yes.
I just said, okay, we're going to the doctor. We're just going to the doctor. Didn't ask, nothing. Just, we're going to the doctor. We went to the doctor, and I let her go in and talk to the doctor about what birth control she wanted to be on. And the doctor and her chose together, and we got her on birth control. And then,
S
like a year later, she was dating a girl, and I was like, yay, no chance of pregnancy.
That's right. That's right. Phew.
Yeah.
Um, and that is something, that changed, when I was able to divorce religion.
Mhm.
That then I wanted my children to have absolute privacy, with their doctor, and I wanted my girls to know that I saw them as, um, approaching adulthood. They were adolescents, and that they were allowed to have private conversations with their doctor. So anytime I took them to the doctor, uh, after that, I would ask my kids, "Do you want me to go in with you, or would you
Mhm.
like to talk to the doctor on your own?" And then even if they always said, "I want you to come in," but then every time I was in there with the doctor and my daughter, I would say, "Would you like a couple of minutes alone with the doctor to discuss anything?"
Yeah.
Which the doctors were very shocked, and actually had a one doctor when my one of my kids was in her early 20s, I guess, or late teens. Um, and I did this. I came in with her, and then the doctor said to my daughter, "Well, do you want your mom to step out while we talk about some things?" My daughter said, "Why would I want my mom to step out? My mom knows like everything about
Yeah.
about me." And I said, "Yeah, that's pretty true. We don't have a lot of secrets in our family." And he was very shocked, this doctor. But I encourage parents to do that. We really need our kids need space to grow and figure
Mhm.
things out. So what you did was such a fantastic gateway to conversation. Just watching a show with your daughter, and then even being able to say, "Huh, are there any kids at your school? Do you know if there are any girls in your school who are pregnant?" Or so it's just kind of like a curious question, not anything like that.
Mhm.
This lets our kids know that we're open to having these conversations. So I think
Mhm.
that's a great way to go about it.
Yeah, I think the whole point about giving them space with the doctor too, that's awesome. That's a really great way to do it. I do the same thing with my daughter. So when we go into the doctor for various things, it doesn't even have to just be your sexual health. It can be your mental health, anything like that. I always ask her, do you want me to come in with me, even though she's 18, she's almost 19.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. Mhm.
we're almost gonna be able to go to the bar with her, but
Yeah. Uh,
she she still sometimes needs us to do stuff like that for her, and it's
mhm.
kind of neat. When they're
It
older, it's
is.
neat to be needed that way still.
It is
Um,
very neat. Yeah, and
yeah.
when one of my kids was in junior high, so at this point I had pulled away from fundamentalism, like hardcore stuff. Would have considered myself more progressive, but still, um, yeah. So there was still religious influence there, and she was attending youth group, and youth group told her there was going to be a life chain. Do you know what a life chain is? It's when all the anti-choice people, right? So the people who only want people to have babies when they get pregnant. I'm trying to say it any way that I can. I don't like to honor people for depriving others of their choices. But anyway, her religious group said, come and help us across from the hospital. We're going to be having this anti-abortion protest. And she told me about it, and I went. And now, of course, my view has completely changed on that. And I've been very transparent with my daughters. We've had many conversations about this. That a woman's body is absolutely her own. It is 100% her own to make her choice. And it's wrong for us to try and make people feel shame about anything, about decisions that they're making that involve their life. So that's, that was an area where I feel like I kind of screwed up at the time because of the religious influence that I still had. And now I think differently. And so I've told my kids differently from this point on. But that's when I think back on that was a learning moment for myself, for sure.
Yeah, no doubt. I don't even I remember my parents teaching me about abortion and all the other different kinds of birth control and all that stuff, and I remember it was totally normal in my house. I didn't even really understand that there was a controversy surrounding it until I went to high school probably, and other people were talking about it. Casey's here. Hi, Casey. And also I noticed that Randolph joined us for a little bit, and Randolph said that he met you.
Yes, we had lunch together with Neil, the 604 atheist.
Oh, cool.
In Vancouver
That's
a
awesome.
couple of years ago. Yeah, it was a delight. So I'll be in touch with him about the conference for sure. Yeah, I did want to say also on the topic of abortion, I went to a public school, even though I was from a religious home, and I was quite a religious young person. And in grade 10, we had to do a science project, and it could be on anything. So I did mine on abortion. And I had the most graphic, awful pamphlets you can ever imagine. And I plastered them all over these boards. And then I stood up and gave a presentation to my 15 and 16-year-old classmates. The science teacher, I think, was fairly shocked. And I was so so kind of cloistered in my thinking and my environment, it never even crossed my mind that anyone would be having sex at that age. I looked out at my classmates, and this was like, here's for in the future when you're going to be having sex. And probably most of them were already having sex, and I had no idea. And I think back on it now, and I just cringe thinking, what if there were young women in that room who had already had to make an agonizing choice, and I just added to their burden, and that was 100% my religion. I'm sorry if you hear that crunching. That's my cat. He's deciding to have his lunch right now when we're on the podcast.
That's okay. We like kitties around here.
We do.
Maya in the chat said, I never told kids that they could talk to me about anything, but they do. I guess I should feel grateful, but usually I just feel my skin crawling. In my head, my grandkids will come from the stork. It's like I grew up in a totally secular household, and my parents were open about this stuff, and it's still not easy to always address everything that they want to know or everything that they need to know. It's not easy to do that, but I think it's really important to break that and make it easier for them with their kids when they're older by not treating it any differently than any other topic. If he comes to me asking me how to make cookies, I'm going to tell him how to make cookies. So if he comes to me asking me about
how to
sex,
make babies,
how to make babies, he's asked before. He when he was really, really little, he's like, how are babies made? And we told him. We just straight up told him. And I think that no matter what your kids ask you, being 100% honest with them is is imperative because for several reasons. One is that it shows them that you respect them as a human being, and that when they're curious, that you want to help them come to an understanding about something. And the other reason why is because the more you're willing to answer their questions, the more questions they're going to come to you with. And like right now, the questions might be simple and easy to deal with or whatever, but down the line there could be something very serious that you need to know about because you can help them with it, and maybe even save them if they are able to come to you with that issue, like if they have a problem with drugs or something like that.
Mhm. Mhm.
It makes them understand that that door is always 100% open and they can come to you with anything. So I think it's very important to be completely honest with them no matter how uncomfortable it makes you.
And you know what? I actually, on a somewhat related topic, that is, I want parents to think about that if they really uh, tell their kids that there is a Santa Claus and there is a tooth fairy. I just want them to be aware of that. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but I am saying keep in mind that you want your kids to always know that you're going to tell them the truth. So I mean, it's one thing to go along with the charade, and then they're 5 or 6 and they're asking like, "Well, is that really?" How'd
Yeah.
that fat guy get down that chimney? Um, tell your children the truth when they're asking you something. Um,
Yeah.
I wanted also to talk about that really interesting clip
Oh
that the
yeah.
fellow sent us on Twitter
Martin.
this morning.
That's Martin. Martin is the director of our son program at IAA. He is just incredibly devoted to all of our atheists at risk cases. He spends
What
all
does
of his
SUN
free
stand
time.
for again?
The Secular Underground Network. So those are the cases of atheists who are in trouble or in danger in other parts of the world for being an atheist. And he's
Mm.
so devoted. He's amazing. He's awesome.
Yeah, and when you mentioned what our topic was going to be about today, about teaching children about sex ed, he mentioned that in the Netherlands there's been a big brouhaha, a big stink made lately because a television network has decided to start airing a program specifically geared towards kids, and they have models come on the show. They look like they were kind of all ages and different body types, uh, and they are naked. And
Yeah.
and there's not like there's nothing covered up. They take off their trench coat because I think, or a robe, whatever it was, and they have nothing on. And so it looked like in the video that we saw, maybe it was kids around grade 4 or 5
Yeah.
that were seeing this. And at first, you could see them and like some embarrassment register on their face, and then just curiosity. And then I wish I spoke Dutch to understand what the kids
Yeah.
were asking, but they're encouraged to ask questions. And their tone of voice when the kids were asking the questions just sounded so mature and matter of fact. I mean, these kids weren't laughing and giggling. And the idea, it seemed like, was to let kids know that not every body is an Instagram body,
Yeah.
but it doesn't mean you're of any less worth or value. And this, to me, is such a tremendously empowering concept to teach our children. And then they know it, we're demystifying sex. That's what we want to
Mhm.
do. We want to demystify it. They don't have to sneak off in their room and look at porn or whatever. And, lots of them do. And hey, but to have this way, if they can see, oh, that's what a body looks like on an older person and on a senior citizen, and just to be able to ask any questions, like, I
Yeah.
applaud the Netherlands. That was pretty
Yeah.
cool.
That is amazing. I've never really understood the shame surrounding the naked body. As I said to you before we went live, even all those fundies, they have one under their clothes. There's we've all got one. It's
They do.
your kid's gonna see one as soon as he goes to have a shower. You're not gonna avoid children seeing nudity because
Mhm.
they are naked sometimes. But um,
Yeah.
I've never been super concerned about nudity with my kids either because I just don't see anything wrong with the human body. And as I told you earlier, I kind of follow with how he feels about it, how our kids feel about it. If they're super uncomfortable, we don't have to watch that stuff. But But if there's like a show and there's a little bit of nudity or whatever, I'm not gonna like shield their eyes or something like that. That's silly.
And that's such a difference between how you and I were raised. And certainly that's how I look at sex and all things related to sexuality now. I mean, we're animals, we're human animals. And this is part of being in the human form. Boy, we get to have lots of fun when it comes to sex. And I want people to explore their bodies and explore their partner's body with their partner's permission and find out what feels good. And even, sometimes find out, man, that didn't really work for me. Let's not do that next time. You need to figure out what works for you. And there's no shame in it at all. And you know what? Senior citizens still have sex. I'm going to tell you that. They have a lot of sex, and they're having some pretty good sex, because by the time you're a senior citizen, you know what works for you and what you like.
Yeah, that's probably very true. I don't know firsthand because I'm not quite a senior citizen yet. But
I'm not, but my partner is. I am. My partner's 22 years older than me, so he's in his 70s, and it's great.
Yeah. I always liked being with older men because I don't know. I don't even. There's so many reasons. More experience. They were more mature, and yeah.
I've also been with significantly younger people. Like I've been with someone that was 12 years younger. I've been with women. I've been with men. I've been with women and men at the same time. I love sex, and I do not have a problem with it. And I want nobody else to have a problem with it either.
Yeah. Well, we shouldn't. There should be no problem with it, because that's where, it's a beautiful thing. That's where we all came from. We all are a result of sex. And I've never understood it, because we've always been, in my household, just so, like, growing up, it was just so open. And like, I still talk to my parents about stuff that other people would be like, oh my God, you talk to your mom about that? And of course I do. Yes, I do. But I remember, like, I grew up in this household where I thought that was normal, and I thought that everybody had a household where everything was out in the open and we could talk about whatever we wanted to without being shamed. And I guess when I was 10, you know what it was? It was when I was 10. I think it was when I was 10 when Dirty Dancing came out.
Ooh,
and yeah, it was a good movie. I love that movie.
That was a good show.
Yeah. And I remember, like, at the time too, like, the way that they danced together, it was so like, oh my gosh, this is so
dirty. It was dirty dancing.
It was like softcore porn or something like that. But I was like, I wanted to watch it. I wanted to see it because all my friends were talking about it, and I wanted to see it. So I asked my parents, "Can we watch Dirty Dancing?" My parents were like, "Yeah, sure." And then, so I went to school, and I'm like, "Yay, we get to watch Dirty Dancing on the weekend." And all my friends are like, "What? Can I come? Can I come and watch?" And so I went home and I asked my parents. I said, "Can a couple of my friends come over and watch it with us?" And my parents
were
like,
entire grade 4 class.
Yeah. Well, my parents had to explain to me at the time. They're like, no, because that might not be something that their parents want them to do, and that's for their parents to decide, and we're not comfortable. And they had to, like, explain to me that other families weren't like our families, and that other people were more uptight about this stuff than we are. And I was just like, I had no idea at the time that other people were like that. I just thought everything was in our household was the way that everybody else was.
Your parents did such a great job, I have to say, to raise you without shame, without understanding or having a concept of any shame over your body. I think that is so cool. My parents wouldn't even let me see Grease. Grease was a musical. They certainly never let me see Hairspray because there's a naked lady in it. Yeah. No.
Oh, wow.
But I've made up for it. I've watched a lot of stuff since then, for sure. But
yeah.
Dirty Dancing's in a class by itself. That is a great show.
Oh yeah, I think once you get through Game of Thrones, you've seen everything that there is to see on planet Earth.
Yes. Yes, I loved Game of Thrones, but I had to take a break at the one time. There was one season where they had the guy who was so horrifyingly really enjoyed inflicting pain on other
Oh
people.
yeah,
I
Ramsay.
had to take a break at that season because it just got to be too much for me.
Yeah.
Which is not to say that consensual pain in sex cannot be pleasurable, because it can be pleasurable.
Yeah.
And that's a whole, that can be for a whole another show. There's just so many things about sex that are wonderful and interesting to talk about.
Yeah. It's true. And
Oh yeah.
yeah.
Ramsay. I
That
see
was-
she's saying
yeah.
it. That was Ramsay. Yeah,
Ramsay.
that was Ramsay.
Everybody remembers Ramsay. That's like, that was traumatic for all of us.
It was too much.
Like, I think I need therapy after that show, to be honest with you.
Well, I know a good therapist.
But the other, yeah, it was a great show, and it's definitely something that I would let my son watch if he asked me.
Game of Thrones?
I'd watch, yeah, I would just, if he's uncomfortable, that I'll let him turn it off or whatever. But I don't feel like I've always been very, very, very clear with him on what's real and what's not real. And I think that's got a lot to do with why he never had any fear of anything growing up, because we were very clear. Like, I used to tell him straight up, I didn't let him come to the conclusion on his own that there were no such thing as ghosts, or there's no such thing as monsters or anything like this. We would just say it. No, there's no such thing. It's silly. That's ridiculous. Because I just didn't ever want him to fear things that there's no reason to fear. And I know that, also having a lot of experience with our daughter having anxiety, I did not want him to have to go through the same things. And I know that if you dwell on things that may not be real, but that make you uncomfortable, that can cause anxiety too. So I'm always open with him about it, as long as we're there and we can talk to him about it.
Oh, I love that. That's great. And you're doing a lot of great things with your kids. If I had it to do over again, I would most certainly do some things differently. But my kids have been able to see me transition from a very uptight fundamentalist to someone who is very free. And
that's powerful, though.
Hopefully,
Hopefully
that's had a powerful impact on them. And also then being able to own up to some mistakes that I made, or things that I wish I would have done differently. I've never heard my parents apologize to me, really, not really for anything. So I think when a parent does apologize, kids take it seriously.
Yeah, we definitely apologize around here. But that I didn't come from a religious background, but I still have lots of regrets too. I think every parent has regrets. Every parent wishes that they did something differently. And I think that's probably one of the biggest struggles. I don't know if you're going through it right now because your kids are older, but when you have a younger kid going through this pandemic and they're just inside all the time, that I think is, you feel like it's your fault. You feel like there's got to be something better that we can do with his time and stuff like that. So that's something that I struggle with, definitely. But I'm good with being open and stuff like that, but we definitely make mistakes, a lot of mistakes.
Well, here's a question for you. How were your folks around the idea of you having overnight guests, like male guests?
Well, when I was little, my best friend was a boy, and we used to have sleepovers all the time. But of course we were little, so I don't know. I had my first serious boyfriend when I was 16 or 17, I think, and he's the one I lost my virginity to, and I used to be allowed to stay over at his house. And He was allowed to stay at our house, but we never did because he had all his games at his house.
Let us say he's the one that you allowed to pop your cherry.
Yes.
Because when we say I lost my virginity, I'm like, is it a pair of mittens? And I
Yeah.
misplaced somewhere. Have you seen my virginity? I can't find it anywhere. I like the idea of reclaiming that as a powerful event. It can be powerful or not powerful. Sex can be funny. Sex can be sometimes embarrassing and awkward, for the first time. Mostly it's embarrassing and awkward as people don't know what they're doing. And if you think of the first time you ever tried to ride a bike or go snowboarding or something that required some, degree of finesse physically and some experience, it took you a while to get the hang of it, and let alone being naked and excited and all this stuff, and you don't really know what you're doing. And I think also responsible parents in this day and age, let's talk to our young people about porn. That's important because there is no way to avoid porn. It's everywhere. It's a huge industry. So let's talk with them about the idea of ethical porn, because ethical porn is out there. Porn sites where we know that the actors and actresses are being treated ethically and properly, and there are all precautions being taken and so forth. And let's definitely talk to them about the fact that it is acting. It's acting. This is not necessarily what all people like. And this is not necessarily what all people look like or how sex is going to play out. We need to be talking to our young people about respect, about self-respect, and about respect for others, about consent. Also hugely important. And we need to normalize these topics, I think.
Yeah. Going back to the popping your cherry thing just real quick.
Yeah.
That's something that I actually talked to about with my stepdaughter too, was that your first time doesn't need to be perfect. Your first time, like if you build it up in your head and you want it to be perfect, there's going to be candles and the person that you're with is the one that you love forever and all of this stuff. You're just going to be disappointed. It doesn't happen that way. Like when I had my cherry popped, I I was with a boy that I loved. I definitely loved him. So I was, it wasn't a regret or anything like that, but it wasn't perfect, and I don't like him anymore. Like, he makes my skin crawl. But that's something that I tried to explain to her, because so many women have stories nowadays of how their first time was terrible or awful and they regret it and they wish they could go back and relive it and blah 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 blah. But I think that you need to prepare your children to expect that it's not going to be with your soulmate. Not that I believe in soulmates, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
It's expect that it's just the first time. It's like you said, it's like the first time you get on a bike. It's going to be sloppy. It's not going to be a pretty thing. It just don't expect it to be.
And let's demystify it and de-shamify it.
Yeah.
So that it will be no problem then when your kid is sitting around the table with you and whomever else to say, yeah, you know what? I did the horizontal hula last night. I had my first sexual experience last night, whatever they want to say it. And that people aren't going to be spitting their coffee out, like that. And at the same time, we're teaching our kids that not everybody is safe with our information. Not everybody deserves to know our intimate information, but they can talk with us about it, and we're not going to pass judgment. When I think of early sexual experiences, so I grew up in a medium-sized town. You're in a small town in Canada. I'm in a medium-sized or small city, say. My first experiences related to sexuality were people unwelcome touching. I was at a swimming pool, someone showing me his genitals, some man that I didn't know, and then in a park and riding my bike with my other 12-year-old friend, and this older teenage boy that I didn't know comes along and grabs me off my bike and is pulling me into the woods to assault me. So those are uh, unfortunately common, sadly common, um, for children growing up, and
Mhm.
not only in North America but around the world. And boys are also victims of assault, and
Mhm.
we need to open up the avenue for our children to talk to us about those things as well. And we need to keep working to make changes in society so that those things decrease in frequency.
I agree. I don't know if you ever followed the story of the lifeguard here in my town. For those of you who don't know, this lives about an hour away from me. And I grew up in Vancouver though, so it was very different.
Mhm.
And now I live in a town that is just farms and wineries and
Mhm.
there's a lot of Facebook posts about who lost their cow and stuff like that. um, but there is a lifeguard here at the pool that I swim at every morning, who he had been here running the pool for 40 years, I believe.
40
And
years.
yeah, and his name was Eddie Spaghetti because he was so great with the kids. And
Mhm.
we all the kids in town would have lessons with him because it was the only pool and he was the only dude who gave lessons to kids. And every school in Summerland would go to the pool to have lessons or whatever. And it was about I don't know, 2 years ago that a friend of mine actually, her son complained that he would ask to help him shower after the lessons and ask to come into the changing room with him. And and long story short, lots of allegations came forward of him just doing weird things like that, and they finally did an investigation and they found that the entire boys changing room was rigged with cameras. And he had
Wow.
just about for 40 years he taught the kids of this town how to swim,
Wow.
and every man who went through that change room was on his computer hard drive naked. Like, yeah, the entire
Crazy.
town basically was affected by it.
So I
He's
hope charges were brought against him.
Yeah, he was sentenced to I can't remember how long, but he's in prison. And there's like a lot of people in town who won't even go to the pool anymore. And so now they're proposing to build a new pool, which I'm very excited about. I would like a new
Mhm.
pool. But
Mhm.
it was terrible. And I remember like cuz we were fairly new to town. So and my son had only had a few lessons there, and my son is very very shy, so he would always go into the changing room and lock the door to get changed. So
Wow.
I'm glad that he was shy and he was not affected by that. But yeah, I hate to see what's on that guy's hard drive. Hate to see
Mhm.
it.
Yeah, and so there are some times that we are not able to prevent or protect ourselves in that sense, like someone with a camera going up the next stall and we don't know what's there, and they're, taking pictures of us that they ought not be doing. Um, but there are other ways that we can teach our children as best we can to protect themselves from predators, because predators are everywhere. Particularly, predators love churches, but also coaching, any kind of coaching, girls and boys kind of stuff. So we need to make sure our kids know that they can talk to us and that our children have rights. And it is
Mhm.
their right to have their body to themselves, not
Yeah.
to show it to anybody else and not to let anybody else touch it. So those
Mhm.
are important topics. I see that Christian made a really good point. I'm worried about young people or minors who have seen internet porn that shows how to have sex but does not teach how to love. That's a very valid and a beautiful point. Mhm.
Mhm. I think that with porn, I think that the way that I approach it anyway, I don't think there's any right way to do it, but I think that the way that I approach it with my son is the same way I approach, like if he watches Captain America, he's not going to go on the roof and try to fly, right? It's it's not real. And you have to really nail that home. You have to watch stuff with your kids that's not porn, but just, movies, TV, all that stuff that's not real, and just reiterate to them, this is not real. Point out when they're very, very young, point out that this actor is in this movie as this person, and this actor is in this movie as this person. That really drives home the point that this is not real.
Mhm.
And you have to be able to separate what is real and what is make believe. And then when you get to a point when you can sit down and talk to them about porn, that porn falls into that category. This is not real. This is not what your sex life is going to be like.
Mhm.
This is just it's like, the Avengers of porn, right? Like it's
Yeah.
not real. And I think that that's a really important thing. And I think that sex and love are also two different things, because some people just have sex for fun, and
Mhm.
there's nothing wrong with that.
That's right.
Some people, um you know they don't connect the sex and the love thing, and that's fine. It doesn't have to
Mhm.
be connected.
Mhm. It's just an
um
enjoyable recreational activity.
Yeah, so you talk to your kids about love and loving one another and respecting other people, and getting to know somebody, and how you know that you love them, and all of those fun things, but
Mhm.
that it can tie into sex, but it doesn't always have to. And I think that
Mhm.
that's one way that you can deal with it.
Yes, and, certainly that also, again, leads into the topic of consent, because what porn I mean, there's so many different types of porn, uh, and if a person is just kinda watching the same porn over and over again, they might think actually that that's, "Oh, okay, women only like this," or "This is what women like," or "This is what women expect." So we need to be talking like you said, "No, this is" porn itself is make believe and pretend, and it's important always to talk to our partner beforehand,
Mhm,
and that other parties, anybody can withdraw consent at any time,
mhm.
and that's exactly when the sex needs to stop. And we can ask our kids too, what tell me about popular kids in your school. What do you think makes them popular? This can even then open a door to, well, that girl gives blowjobs on the buses, or whatever the thing is. We
Mhm.
want our kids to be able to talk with us about anything related to sex and anything related to their lives. We want to be raising kids healthy and resilient.
Yeah, and you touched on something really important there too, about how, you can go in and watch porn and think that that's like, if you have no experience and nobody's ever talked to you about this stuff, you can think, "Oh, that's what women like, or that's what men like." I think that that's an important part of the sex talk with kids, is to tell them that the only way that you can find out what your partner likes is through communication, clear communication, and, talking with each other about what you like and what you don't like, and setting boundaries and respecting boundaries and all of those things. And just you tell them that, because it's made for the screen, because it's made for entertainment, it's blown out of proportion. It's larger than life. It's not a realistic depiction of what everyday sex is like. And so don't don't take advice from it. Don't get ideas from it. Talk to your partner. Get ideas from them.
Mhm.
That's where you need to come up with what they like.
Yes, and also let us be diligent in reminding our children and young people, that things that they post on the internet can stay there a really long time, and things can get out of control very quickly. And of course, that person messaging you who looks like a really cute guy or girl, there's a good chance they could just be a predator. They may not be who they show up as in their picture, and that it's really not safe for children and teenagers to be sending naked pictures of themselves, texting them to anybody. It's just not a safe practice. So
Yeah.
that's another conversation to have with your kids. Boy, I hope people have enjoyed our conversation and have maybe got some ideas, or that this will open doors for them to talk to other people.
Yeah, I think that this is definitely something that ex-religious people struggle with. I get a lot of questions. How should I explain this to my kid? How should I explain that to my kid? And it's just, you just got to be open, honest, answer their questions as honestly as you possibly can. And, if you are honest and you're talking to them with care, there's really no topic you can't cover.
Hmm.
You're not going to traumatize your child by talking about sex with
That's
them.
it.
Yeah, you're
Yeah.
it's just fine. They're going to be totally fine if you sit down and talk to them about sex. It's normal. So
Hmm.
I suggest you all do it. I suggest you all go home and talk to your kids about sex now.
Yeah, and make sure you have some sex too, because
Yeah.
it's good for you. I can tell you, it's good for you. Whatever ails you. No, not whatever
Yeah.
ails you, but it can be helpful in a lot of ways. And it's also
Mhm.
okay if you don't like sex and you're not even attracted to other people. If you are asexual, it's all okay.
Yeah.
We don't want you
Just
to
do
feel
you.
any shame. Yeah, just do
Mhm.
you. I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
So
All
sign up
right.
for
Well, we should.
court and donate
Yeah.
money to your incredibly worthy cause. That's very exciting. And I guess we'll see
Thank you.
everyone same time, same place next week.
Yeah, next week at noon on this channel. We'll see you later, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.